So the way we're going to do today's session is we're going to each introduce ourselves, myself and my two panelists here, and then we're going to basically kind of go into a panel discussion. I'll be asking them questions, we'll be answering all those, and then the last 15 minutes or so, we're going to have you guys come up and ask any questions. And when we do so, we're going to have you guys line up over here, and you'll be talking, I believe, into this mic right here. And so when you guys ask us these questions, we'll do the best that we can to answer those questions, and if not, you can always grab us afterwards and we can talk to you one-on-one. And then after today's session at 11 o'clock, as JD said, we will have breakout sessions, and at the very end of this we'll go through what each of our breakout sessions will be, and then you guys can ask us further questions on that. So does that sound good to everybody? Thumbs up? All right, we're good. Cool. Okay, so as a quick introduction, my name is Brian Gifford. To give you a little bit of history on my experience in Mexico, I've mostly had my experience in Baja, so I've probably been down there about 10 or 12 times in the last 20 years, and so that's kind of my experience. Now I will tell you right up front, I live in a motorhome full-time. I've been a nomad for years, but when I go to Baja, I just take my little geo tracker, and so I am tent camping down there. So while I don't have as much experience driving a big rig down there, I do have experience on, living a small life down there. So that's a little bit of what I bring to the table for you guys. And so Nola, how about you?
Okay, good morning. Let me just say right up front that for 2 weeks now, I have been crazy nervous about this because I'm being on the stage with Brian and Baja Frank, and I kept thinking, what else can I possibly bring to the table? One of them is, of course, I'm a woman, and I did drive all of mainland Mexico, or a lot of it alone, going down to the Yucatan and staying down there for several months and coming back up. And I have a lot of time in Baja, including living in a campground in Baja for a year and a half. But I do want to bring a little more to the table than, I was going to say my bra, than being a woman. I am a zoologist, and about 18 years ago I evolved into writing guidebooks with a focus on global volunteer travel programs. I chose this path because I wanted to uplift the rescues and sanctuaries and NGOs that I had seen when traveling the world, increase awareness about them, and get them educated helping hands. I also wanted to educate travelers to think and consider what they're doing when they're traveling, but also how you spend your money. Are you spending your money in a way that uplifts local communities, sanctuaries, reserves, and things like that? And an example of a way of spending that could do harm would be seeing somebody on a beach with a monkey and paying them to take a selfie with it. Nobody's going to say, well, we killed, they always say, this monkey is rescued. They're not going to say, hey, we killed several members of the troop and the mother to get this little baby so you could take a picture. So, trust your senses a lot. But other examples of where spending does good would be supporting a legitimate animal sanctuary and visiting them and maybe taking a tour there. Or in my case, 3 years ago to this week, I pulled into the community of Celestin on the western Yucatan Peninsula, and I was there to see the Celestrin Biosphere Reserve, where 3,000 flamingos overwinter together in one small area, and it's definitely a sight to see. But the Biosphere Reserve overall is lovely. Yet the best discovery was the community of Celestrin, which has completely embraced the flamingos, the reserve. So you go there, and when you spend money in the small mom and pop restaurants with the birding books all over, or hire a local boat to take you out to the reserve, you know that you're helping employ those people and give them a life that they really seem to be loving, and in that way you're uplifting the reserve. And a borderline example of that is the Monarch Butterfly Reserve, or Biosphere Reserve I should say, in the mountains outside Mexico City, where there's a lot of good going on, and you can feel it when you're at the eco lodges or hiring a guard, but when you go into the community, you still feel a lot of people wanting it to be opened up to logging and things like that. I don't know if we could ever see the butterflies enough to fix the situation there, but just thinking before you spend when you travel Mexico is a good first step to just help uplifting a lot of the communities there. And I won't go on that much longer here, I promise. I just want to go ahead and thank everyone for being here today. If you do want to talk more about travel with a purpose, volunteering, or thinking before you spend, you can always come to my breakout session at the end of this talk. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and hand the microphone back over to Brian or Frank? Frank, it's all yours.
Hi, my name is Frank. I started out coming to the RTR many years ago, and I went on a HOWA caravan, actually a couple of HOWA caravans, and then I went to Van Aid, and I went to all these different events and stuff, and I was blown away, and I decided that I wanted to participate and be of service to the community, but I didn't want to do an event, so I started leading caravans to Baja. About 5 years ago, we started doing caravans for the nomad community, and at this point we have several volunteers that lead groups down, and so I just came back from Baja in December. I went and took a group down, so that's kind of where I've come from. I've been going down to Mexico. I've been to the mainland and to Baja. My aunt lived down there for a while, and so we used to have to go down and visit her all the time, which at the time I was like a little kid, so I didn't particularly care for it, but anyway. So I have a long history of going to Mexico and hanging out there, and I kind of understand a lot of the culture, so I just want to provide that expertise back to you guys.
All right, that sounds great. All right, so we're going to go ahead and just start with some questions. I'm going to ask them, and I'll answer a little bit of them myself, but that's just kind of how we're going to share our experiences. And so the first thing I want to ask you guys is, why? Why do we want to go down to Mexico? Or maybe what's your favorite memory of Mexico? Go ahead, Nola, you want to go first?
Well, why we want to go to Mexico? First off, it is really convenient. It's right there, as opposed to having to fly overseas. And we can take our rigs, we can take our animals with ease. It's not like going to, travel in Southeast Asia, where it gets a lot more complicated. Favorite memory, I would have to say, discovering Celestrum was great. But if you ever get a chance to drive from there to Ciudad del Carmen, the coastal drive along there, and especially if you're a kayaker, just don't miss it. It's just amazing.
So, one word, tacos. Shrimp tacos, fish tacos. I mean, it's amazing. The seafood is incredible. But also the culture is really amazing. I had a couple of people on one tour that came down with me, and they were scared to death. I mean, I don't even know why they came. They were so afraid of being in Mexico and traveling in Mexico, and oh my God, we're going to get robbed. And so I took them down, and they decided they wanted to go over and look at the one corner or one area of the Baja 1000 race. And they went with one other couple over there. And they got to a town on the race course, and they stopped and they asked this guy, hey, do you know where we could set up and kind of watch the race? And the guy said, no problem. He took them over to his rancho, set them up on a major corner in the race, sat there and let them camp on his property for 4 days. He then took them to meet his son. They went out to dinner every night, and they paid nothing. And they came back and they were like, this is amazing. And for me, it's that kind of experience that I like to provide for people. It's like you come with whatever your attitude is, and the people will amaze you. So that's all I wanted to share. Thanks.
All right, and then my answer to that is kind of a little bit with Frank, like tacos. They're delicious and amazing, and the street tacos and the food down there and the culture is just simply amazing. I do it because I like the adventure of it. It's sometimes fun to put yourself outside your comfort zone, but it's a little bit of a light version of that because even though I don't speak Spanish, I know some words, but you don't have to be fluent. If you're really good at charades, like sounds like, you know, whatever, you know, 2 syllables, taco, I want that for my belly. You know, it's really easy to travel down there, and it's a good introduction to international travel. And then the other thing is the wildlife, and I know that Nola will talk about this as well as Frank, but I remember seeing out in the Bay of Conception, there was basically a feeding frenzy, and so you had all these porpoises or dolphins that were out there, and they were just going crazy, and you could see them from a distance and just boiling the water as they were bringing the fish up so that they could just eat on them, basically. So just so much wildlife out there. So okay, so the next question I have is, when we think about going down there, what do you guys recommend for yourselves, or what do you think about going solo or going with a caravan? What has been your experience with that?
I have, well, when I came back up this time, I drove up solo, and I happened into some situations, but I didn't have any problems as far as driving solo goes. First time that you go down, it's more convenient to go with a group. If you're staying in campgrounds and on beaches where they're charging you an admission, then I would consider going by myself. If you're going to try and free camp or boondock, then you want to do that in a group. And also traveling in a group, it makes it a little easier. If you have a breakdown or something like that. Although, interestingly enough, from folks that I've talked to, when there's been a breakdown, you don't see the tourists stopping to help, but you do see the locals stopping to try and help you out and fix whatever your problem is. So it's just kind of an interesting little comment there. Thanks.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Just what do you prefer going down there solo, or what's your experience going solo or in a caravan?
I've never gone in a caravan, so I really can't comment on that. I would say if you are at all nervous about Mexico, and from the questions I get, I know a lot of people are, then go with a group the first time. And you know, no one's tying you to that group. If you feel instantly comfortable, you can peel off and do your own thing. And if you decide that you just want to stay with them the whole trip and come back sometime later by yourself, that works too. You know, you trust your spidey sense and know what you want to do, what's best for you.
And so, Nola, would you say that if you were solo, that should not impede you, or that shouldn't prevent you from going down there, would you say?
I didn't find it to be that. I definitely not in Baja, and while I found driving through the northern part of Mexico, the mainland, to be a bit of a Wild West and more weird, funky things going on at traffic stops and toldas, southern Mexico is just wide open, very expensive toll roads that are beautiful to be on. And I had no problems there.
In my own experience is that I typically go down there. I don't necessarily caravan, but I usually try to go down with like 2 or 3 other people. Mostly because if you do break down, things of that nature, although what both of these guys have said, you find the locals will come by and help you out, and they have so much mechanical know-how, and they can get you back on the road. It's pretty amazing how giving they are down there. But what I typically would do is I would go down with 2 or 3 other rigs, and then on the way back, I would usually just do it by myself. You know, and I think it's a little bit an unnecessary fear that I had, but I felt better going down there with a small group. But once you get down there, you're like, oh, this is just driving. I know how to do that. I've been doing that for 40 years. You know, and so it is one of those things where I think you can just see what's most comfortable for you. I don't like doing more than like 2, 3, or 4 other people, just because sometimes it gets too big and it's harder to find camping, and it's harder to really herd those cats, quite honestly. I don't want to be responsible for like 8 rigs because it just gets more difficult for me. So if you find 2 or 3 other people that you all have the same interests, and same travel style, I'd say go down there and make it an adventure for yourself. All right, so that kind of goes on to the next question of, do you feel safe in Mexico? And do you maybe have any advice for safety in Mexico?
I do feel safe in Mexico, but I feel safe in a lot of places that seems to surprise people, so it could be that I'm just wired weird. However, I think that it is that a lot of people are just a little too fearful. You won't regret giving it a try. The best advice I can say is if you get pulled over or stopped by the military, which will happen, absolutely, smile, be friendly. Don't give them attitude, and that goes a long way.
Well, talking about the military, I speak pretty good Spanish, but when I am, because there's 5 military checkpoints on the way down to Cabo if you went all the way, and when I'm at the military checkpoints, I don't speak Spanish. Okay, it's like that's just one of the things that I do as a little tip I'd pass on to you. And then in terms of being safe, for me, I take particular routes that I know I'm not going to wind up engaging with like local cops. I want to bypass Mexicali, and I go in through Yuma down at San Luis Rio, Colorado, which puts you onto a toll road, which then puts you onto the 5 South. And so I don't really get involved with a lot of that stuff. Most of the problems that I've seen have been up in Mexicali, Tijuana, or Ensenada. So I just don't go to those places. And when I have to go down, I always go first thing in the morning. And I'm usually away from the border as quickly as possible. I don't recommend going to any of those 3 places because the local cops are going to be, I call it DWG, driving while gringo. And so you want to be careful that, it's like if you do get pulled over, you have a choice. You can pay a bribe, or you can sit there and say, I want to go to the police station and pay for this ticket, in which case they usually cease and desist after a while, or you can just play dumb, don't speak Spanish, and eventually they give up. So it's your call. Depends on the situation. And in general, as far as security goes, it's like I take routes that are approved by the State Department. I monitor several Baja specific sites for any problems and any local things, so that way I'm pretty much aware of what's going on when, and then I also have some local contacts that have connections or know of people who are in various criminal organizations, and usually when something's going to go down, they know about it, and so they'll tell me, and so I wind up missing or avoiding those places as well.
I'll add that, like Frank, I do play dumb at the stops, and when I get pulled over, I call it playing blonde, but it works. I also only carry a small bit of cash in my wallet. I have it other places, and the new thing that we can do in the last 20 years is, when they're trying to demand money, is hold up the ATM card and say, we need to go to an ATM and then on to the police station, or ATM over and over again, because they're not pulling you over with a card reader on them, not so far, and it gives you just a good chance to say, the reason I'm traveling with so little money is because I pay for everything with this. And I've had that get me out of 2 what could have been very expensive situations. And I think I brought one in at $10 and one in at $20 that I was being told would cost me $500. So you've got to stick to it, though. You can't suddenly find your cash. Once you're committed to holding up your ATM and blinking a lot, you got to stay by it. It took me 25 minutes to get out of that $500 fine, but I did.
Stick to your guns. That makes sense. The one thing I would add is that just don't be flashy. I mean, if you have expensive jewelry or whatever, just don't display that kind of stuff. Don't bring it down there. Keep it hidden in your rig or leave it with a friend. But just don't show that you have a lot of money, because you will become a target. I mean, just like in the U.S., the same thing can happen in the U.S. Like, if you are really flashy, then you are a mark. So that would be the one piece of advice I have. The other thing is just kind of keep your senses about you. For instance, don't go to the bar late at night and get trashed. Like, it's just not a smart thing to do. Or make sure that you have a designated intelligent person with you. Someone who keeps their senses about them. And so again, just kind of use common sense. Know that just like in anywhere in the U.S., you want to just keep your senses about you. That's the only thing I would add.
Fortunately, a friend of mine reminded me that I need to talk about pot. All right? In general, you'll hear that...
Not the kind you cook with.
Yeah, not the kind you cook with. No, we're talking about marijuana. All right. Number one, when you go down there, you can get pot locally, right? So don't bring it with you. Number two, they are looking for, don't put it in your spices. They look and they smell and they'll bring in a dog. I have had 2 instances where people ignored my advice in my caravans, and I had to go back and deal with the comandante. And in one case I said, well, she was in California last night and she smoked some pot in her rig, and it's legal there in California. And he's like, okay. And I said, and so the dog is probably smelling that residue of marijuana. And so he said, okay, and he let her go. All right? And in the last trip, this woman brought a thing of lip balm. On the lip balm was a little tiny marijuana leaf. They saw that and went crazy about it. And I said, look, it's just part of the brand. There's nothing there. This guy was sitting there taking out his phone trying to find the brand because he was convinced there was THC or there was CBD in there, both of which, by the way, are illegal in Mexico. And when they search, one of the things they're looking for is they're looking for vape pen adapters and vape pens. So don't do that. The one thing I have noticed is that some people bring gummies, and I haven't heard of any problems so far with that. They're putting them in bags of candy, they're doing whatever. But in general, it's a better idea to just not bring pot. It creates a lot of problems. And really what it is it's an opportunity for you to have to pay some money. $100 maybe to the local cops, $400 or $500 to the military. And so in general, it's like, I wouldn't risk it. And that's my advice. I just wanted to give you some heads up about that.
Yeah, that's something I would agree with as well. Just in my thoughts, just don't bring it down there. It's just you're taking too much of a risk, in my opinion. All right, so the speed limit is usually around 35 to 45 miles an hour, sometimes 50, and it's all in kilometers. But don't break the speed limit down there, because you're just kind of asking for trouble. You're giving them an excuse to pull you over, and it doesn't hurt to just go slow and enjoy the scenery. It is so freaking beautiful down there. It's worth taking it at a slow pace. The other thing I would say for driving tips, if you are in a small caravan or with a group of friends, bring walkie-talkies. Cell service is not as prominent down there. And so having a quick, your walkie-talkies, you can say, hey, there's a pothole coming up, watch out. Or, a semi is coming up behind you and it's trying to pass. And so letting each other know what's going on is very, very helpful when you're driving down there.
The other thing I wanted to mention is, it's a custom in Mexico on the highways. When you're driving, and let's say you got a slow rig in front of you, or you got a big rig in front of you, what the Mexicans will do is they'll turn on their left turn signal, and that means that it's safe to pass. If they have their right turn signal on, that means don't pass, wait. And then when it is safe to pass, in that driver's opinion, he'll flip his turn signal. And that's also something that we do when we're doing groups. We use the walkie-talkies so that the person who's the tail gunner will sit there and go, we got a passer coming up. And then I'll check ahead if I'm in front and see that the road's clear, in which case I'll say, okay, everybody, left turn signal on. So we do that so that people can safely pass us. Because one of the things that everybody Mexicans and tourists and everybody else hates are these giant groups of 50 Airstreams in a row that don't do anything except drive slow and piss everybody off, and they don't leave even space so that you can swing out in front of somebody and then pop back in if you need to. So that's from some of the commercial companies. And so I just wanted to mention that as well. It's a cool thing down there. It's a cool thing down there. Thanks.
One more thing I did forget to mention, and I don't know if this is safety, it's more like safety for your wallet. The toll roads in southern Mexico are big, wide, usually empty, beautiful, glorious roads, but you need to budget as much for the tolls as you do for your gas. They're expensive. And I was in a single axle vehicle. They do charge by the axle. So look into that, Google it. Everything changes, but if you have a large vehicle, triple check those prices before you get south.
All right, very good. So the next question I like to ask is, so we've all decided we want to go to Mexico. We know about the driving, we know about some of the safety issues and things like that. What do we need to do before crossing the border as far as here still in the U.S. to help make our Mexican trip a little better, safer, whatever?
How many of you have passports? Can I see it? And they're valid for at least 6 months? Or you've checked to make sure they're valid for at least 6 months? That's a good starting point right there, of course. As far as crossing into the mainland, if you want to bring your own vehicle down, there is something called a tip, and that is a deposit you put on your vehicle when you're driving it into Mexico, basically, to make sure that you're not going to leave it there. I don't quite get how all that thinking works. I don't think about it. Just know that depending upon the age of your vehicle, it is $200 to $400. But again, this is if you're going more than 20 miles down into mainland Mexico. It is not applicable to Baja. Yeah, Frank's probably real good at the rest of this, so I'm just going to turn it over to him.
Okay, so on the passports, if there's anybody that wants to go this year and they don't have a passport, then talk to me after the meeting and we'll work out a expedited passport. You have to go to San Diego to get it and blah, 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 but I can cover that in detail later. In terms of going down, you're going to need insurance. You need liability insurance, minimally. I buy the driver's license policy because it covers any vehicle plus a friend, any vehicle that we're driving, and I happen to bring like motorcycles and other stuff. If I paid for those individually, it costs me a fortune. So I do the driver's license policy, liability only. I happen to have Progressive insurance. Progressive provides me with comprehensive coverage in Mexico, so I don't usually buy that. I usually buy either a 6-month or an annual policy, even though I might be going for a shorter amount of time, because it's cheap. It's almost, if you buy like a month policy, it's going to run you almost as much as a 6-month policy. And you might want to decide to stay longer. So I always buy the 6-month policy. You have to have a passport or a passport card, so that when you go into Mexico, we stop at the border and you get what's called an FMM, which is, in Spanish, it's Forma Migratoria Múltiple. And basically it's a multiple immigration tourist visa. It's $30. Do not get it online, because we've had so many problems in the past. Number one, there's all these fake sites out there that are going to charge you up to $100 when they're really only 30. Not only that, but when you pay that $100, and you get to the border, they're not going to accept it. Second problem is, when you go online to the official site, it's a 3-step process where you have to sit there and print out what your initial form, and you also have to print out the receipt. If you don't have those, they're going to charge you again. And then the third problem is, it's Mexico. That system may be up, maybe down while you're trying to do your thing. So rather than sit there and mess with it at all, it's easier to just do it in person. So the FMM is huge, and having a passport is huge. I've heard some people say, oh, I can go down there with an enhanced driver's license. You might be able to go to Algodones, but if you're going down any depth whatsoever, they're setting up checkpoints as a result of our border policies, and they're looking for that FMM. So you can risk it. Some people do. I don't recommend it.
All right, and a couple things that I would add is that make physical copies of your passport, your credit cards, things like that, just so you have a secondary copy of that, including the phone numbers to call if you lose those items or they get stolen. It's just kind of a best practice. You also want to make sure that your credit card knows that you're going down to Mexico. Sometimes, anymore, a lot of them that's automated, but sometimes you do need to let them know so they don't put a hold on your card because you're traveling to a foreign country. They might think it's stolen or so forth. So you might just call your credit card company and find out about that. Also, some credit cards have a 3% foreign transaction fee. Look for a credit card that does not have that, because you don't want to pay an extra 3% on everything that you buy. The other things you want to look into is your cell phone. Look to see that you are covered down there. There's some places with Wi-Fi, but a lot of the U.S. carriers now will give you access in Mexico, but you want to check with your individual carrier to make sure you do that. I think with the Verizon, it's kind of astronomically expensive to do like the daily plan. So I would recommend, I think I used Cricket years ago and a couple others. It worked great down there. So just check with your cell phone carrier.
The other thing that you can do is you can go buy a Mexican phone, or you can go into the Telcel store and you can get a chip to put into your phone, and then you get a Mexican phone number, and that's what most people in Mexico are doing. And you use primarily WhatsApp because your social media is free on their data plans, and we're talking $10 a month plus the cost of the phone to be able to use that. The other thing is I would put all my phones, what I do is I put it on Wi-Fi calling, so that way I wait until I'm into a campground or I'm into some place that might have Wi-Fi, which, by the way, can be extremely shaky down there, or make really good friends with somebody that has Starlink. Oh, by the way, I have Starlink.
You just made 300 friends. Congratulations. That's absolutely true. And kind of in line with the cell coverage, again, it's not consistent down there as far as there's huge swaths of land without cell coverage. So what I like to do is I also want to download my offline maps for like Google Maps or whatever. Just make sure you do an offline copy of those because it'll come in very handy.
We have a Facebook group called Baja Tour. It's a private group. We got about 2,100 people in there now. Walt Pendleton is the administrator. Some of you may know Walt from HOWA. He leads one of the virtual caravans. And so Baja Tour, private group, 2,100 members, Walt Pendleton. You should be able to find it with that information. And then we ask a series of questions. Have you been in your rig for 6 months? Because you do not want to go down to Baja without knowing your rig, okay? It's just too hard. Second thing is, after this meeting, there's going to be a breakout session, and if you want to go to Baja this year with me, be at that breakout session.
Talk to us about the tolls. Do you have to have the exact change? I mean, you know what happens when you don't have exactly the right change and how to pay for it? Like, is it different there than it is here?
On the mainland in the north, a lot of the toll booths have been closed down, and you will pull up to what I call guy in a bucket, the guy with a bucket, and you're not sure if he's official, you're not sure if he's a local standing out there to get some money, but don't argue the point. Just always have some loose change so it makes that clanking sound and a small bill in your hand, and just, it's better than arguing the point for a couple dollars. Drop it in there. Keep on going. You may be feeding his family, you may be getting ripped off. It could go either way, but as far as going to the south, you don't, the toll booths there are manned and open, or they were 2.5, 3 years ago, and they will have change. That's not an issue, and they'll give you a little card and everything. One thing to watch about as you get closer to the Caribbean coast is over there some of the side roads are fine. As you approach Cancun, you'll get to a toll booth that says, that is $30 for like a couple miles, and you'll find out after you go through it that the exit to go down the coast is the next exit. So keep an eye on your maps when you're getting towards your destination, and if you can possibly go around at that point, I say find a smaller road.
In Baja, the way we go, which is a State Department approved route for State Department employees, we're on a toll road for the first 25 minutes. That toll road, they'll take dollars, they'll take pesos, they'll charge you appropriately. It's not a deal, and it's like $2 or $2.50.
And it is dollars and pesos both on the toll roads in southern Mexico as well, on mainland.
Well, good morning. So I love everything you guys are doing out here. This is actually my first year being totally involved with the snowbird life. And I do have a couple questions though. What's your thoughts on the U.S. Department of State recommending for no Americans to be traveling into Mexico at this point?
Okay, so basically, I follow the State Department guidelines. So, like I said, the problem areas are up by the border. And then you have a heavy cartel presence down in Cabo, okay? I just don't go to those places. It's kind of like, would you not go to Chicago because there's all these killings in the south side of Chicago? Okay, you just don't go to the south side of Chicago.
Well, the reason why I'm asking these questions, because I work down beside Border Patrol every day. And I'm just getting ready to retire from it. But these borders right now are controlled by the cartel. And that's a fact. The other problem that we see right now, I love Mexico, don't get me wrong. I used to love just traveling right across the border. But right now, at this point, even myself, don't feel safe traveling into Mexico. So that's why I'm asking these questions here today, because right now, are you aware of how many Americans have been killed in Mexico this year already?
Yes.
So that's the only reason why I was asking these questions. Sure.
Well, one thing I would say is that I personally avoid the border towns because that's where most of the issue is. So I cross the border about 8 or 9 in the morning, and I go as far south as I can in an 8-hour day. And so I avoid those border towns because that's usually where more issues happen. And so I've always felt very safe down there. I feel safer there than I would in LA, in any major city, because people get, I hate to say it, but people get killed all the time. And so it's just one of those things where you just keep your wits about you, avoid the border towns, and we take a risk every time we drive down the road in any vehicle that's supposedly a death trap, and we're guaranteed to die on the highway somewhere. But yeah,
the reason why I'm still concerned, we just got done having a couple more American women gunned down over in Mexico. So to all you guys out there, love what these guys do. Just be alert and be safe down there. That's all I'm going to tell you. So appreciate you guys. Love what you do.
And not only that, but going down Highway 1 just last week, there were the rancheros out there protesting by lighting tires on fire and stopping all traffic on Highway 1. When I came back up, there was a cartel shooting in San Felipe, and I happened to drive into the military presence that was there. It's cartel people shooting cartel people. Like I said, most of the time the problems are in the border areas. So I just don't stay there. And I cross early. My theory is that most criminals sleep late.
I feel the same. I actually lived in Punta Banda, which is south of Ensenada, for 1.5 years in a campground. Rented an old RV there right on the estuary. And the cartels would warn us and let us know, hey, stay home tonight because we're going to have issues with the police. And so we did. It's not as traumatizing as you would think. The only way to prove it to you is for you to go.
The other thing is the cartels have, at this point, they own pieces of hotels and other things. And they know that if we rip off the tourists, we're going to be cutting into our own income. So can you get into an outlying area and have some stuff happening? Probably not, but particularly where we go. But if you're if you're in between Ensenada and Tijuana, it's like going to the south side of Chicago. Okay, you're walking down the south side of Chicago at 3 in the morning, you're asking for trouble. So I keep my head down. So that's it.
Hi, my question is regarding the whale watching. I understand that there's different kinds of whales in the Pacific and in the Sea of Cortez, and then there's also the whale sharks. which are different. Can you please comment on what the best seasons are for each one of those different types of whales and sharks? And then is there a sweet spot where you can maybe get to all of them?
Yeah, there is a sweet spot, and that's our winter. December, January, February is where I actually came up from the Yucatan across the mainland, hitting the flamingos that were overwintering, the butterflies that were overwintering. Took a ferry across the Sea of Cortez, whale sharks in La Paz, straight up to Bahia Magdalena with the gray whales, to Loreto with the blue whales, back across to San Ignacio, gray whales again. In 6 months, what you can see in wildlife just taking that route is absolutely amazing. And if you're just doing Baja, you can do it in a matter of a couple weeks, but I advise taking longer and enjoying it.
And I think if you were to go to Guerrero Negro, which is halfway down, it's the border town between, or it's on the border between Baja California Norte and Baja California Sur. If you go there, you want to be there for sure, like late February to early March. That's going to be pretty much guaranteed that you'll have them. Before and after that, they may or may not come because it's like nature, you know, they're going to show up when they show up.
I have 3 questions. The first one is regarding, and you might have covered and I didn't hear it, bear spray and pepper spray. Are those items allowed?
No, they're not allowed. Okay, I put my bear spray in with my spray-on lubricants, and I've never had a problem. I have a machete hanging by my door. They've never said anything about that. And same thing, you know, it's like you don't want to bring a pistol, you don't want to bring bullets, and you don't want to bring a rifle. That's a trip to jail.
I'll just add that I've actually held people's bear spray in the U.S. for them when they travel down to Mexico. So if you have a friend to give it to, just give it to a friend.
What about the personal little pepper spray?
They don't want you to do anything, you know, like offensive. But like I said, I just put it in with my spray lubricants. I've never had a problem. In fact, I left one open one time and they never said anything.
So my second question is about food and grocery stores and quality of food that you get. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there's a organic farm in Mulahay, where you can go get your vegetables that are fresh and organic. There are major grocery stores, kind of like a Mexican Safeway in San Felipe, Guerrero Negro. They're called Calamax or Lay's. It's a chain all the way down. Or you can buy from the local, like for example, there's a farmer's market that happens every day in La Paz, and you can get fresh vegetables there that are just amazing.
And a last quick question. With a whale and whale watching, if I have my own kayak, can I just go out now?
No, you cannot go out on a kayak or swim out there or anything. You have to be in one of their boats.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, I'm sorry that we are actually out of time. Why don't we take, what we can do is, I apologize, but we're going to have a couple breakout sessions. I'm going to be around I'm going to do a general breakout session, so anything that these two are not doing a breakout session for, I'm just going to be answering questions. And so you can come to me with those questions that you guys had. I apologize, it kind of went longer than we wanted. But so real quick, Frank, what is going to be your breakout session?
My breakout session is if you want to go to Mexico and do a caravan, I'm going to be over there in left field, and you can come over and we'll chat it up and figure out what we're going to do.
Do you have a date?
We're going to figure that out soon.
And if you have any question about anything I babbled on about, I'm going to be straight back here by the stage in center field. If nobody does, then I'm going to wander over and join Baja Frank's group because I do also plan on joining his caravan next week.
And as I said, I'm just going to answer general questions and anything that you guys just want to chat about regarding Baja. I'll be over here this way, whatever the direction that is.
Right by the outhouse.
Right field, sure, by the outhouse. Thank you so much for being here today. Did you guys get some good information today? Fantastic. We will see you guys all down in Mexico or Baja sometime down the road. Thanks, guys.